Hey there everyone, it's me, Buster Blader from Yu-Gi-Oh! In Dark Souls! Just kidding, much to everybody's disappointment, it's Rata, the smug Slavic anime girl. Recently, and by recently I mean like the entire last month and then some, I've been kinda busy with finals, which is the reason why you didn't see a single solitary video since the Gimmick Puppet review. Gotta study them books, you know. Regular content should return as soon as July comes up, but in the meantime, I think a Q&A video is long overdue, given that I opened the email address for questions a while ago and might as well cover some of the more hard-hitting inquiries. And to immediately disappoint the majority of the audience, no, I will not be answering any of the numerous questions about my penis. Also, before we start, I just want to point out that to make up for my non-existent upload schedule, it is extremely possible that I might start holding a bi-weekly podcast on the channel with me and a few fellow weebs. So before I do that, I would like to hear everybody's thoughts on the idea. Also, I'm not using the Exile Curved Greatsword because it's broken, I'm using it because it looks the closest to Buster Blader's Destruction Sword. And because it's broken. Let's go over some general questions first, those being the ones that were asked by a significant number of people. Is Rata your real name, and if not, why Rata? So first of all, no, it's not my real name. In fact, I don't think there's a single person in Montenegro called Rata, save for maybe nicknames. No, Rata is short for my usual online username, that being Rata. And what Rata is... well, here's a 2-second clip from Bombfunk MC's Freestyler, which I hope explains it concisely. What are your honest thoughts on link monsters and link summoning? Alright, so this question seems to mean a big deal to a lot of people, and understandably so, because it is the first rule change of this scale that we've had so far, and there's been quite a lot of obnoxious fear-mongering about it meaning the death of the game, etc, etc. So obviously these kinds of claims may have some ground in reality given their prevalence in the community. If I had to sum up my honest opinion right now, I'd say it's cautiously optimistic but slightly leaning negative. My initial thoughts were roughly the same as everybody else's, meaning I'd find it cool if it wasn't for the butchering of every other exotic summoning mechanic. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't hit rituals as well, seeing how not even the barrier had any mercy towards them. I like the concept more than pendulums, I'll tell you that for a fact. I was never a fan of pendulum monsters' overly bloated effects, and I didn't feel like recurring main deck monsters were a logical next step after XCs. Blame it on my attention span of a goat, but I honestly found the combination of pendulum and monster effects annoying to keep track of, and while I did like their inbuilt recovery option, it often ended up being a chore to play against. But back to links. At first I was under the impression we would quickly get a fair amount of attribute-based Link 2 monsters like Mrs. Radiant, but we're 4 months into the reveal of the mechanic, and most of the generic easy-to-make links are primarily intended for continued link spamming, as opposed to giving old archetypes some room to breathe. This of course doesn't mean we won't get more easily accessible link monsters in the future, but the odds that they would make any old archetype meta relevant are extremely slim, seeing how links seem to be getting the early synchro treatment, as in, if you don't use this mechanic and this mechanic alone, you're not winning. This is mostly evidenced by the very obvious newest OCG ban list intended to completely destroy Zodiacs and potentially give links some time to shine, as well as the fact that if you look at Fireball Dragon's effect and see nothing wrong, you're either mentally deficient or a very money-hungry company. I wonder which is the case here. But, on the positive side, I do like Topologic Bomber Dragon and the way he effectively turns the field into a minefield, as well as Barrel Load because the idea of loading up a giant gun dragon with smaller bullet dragons is just stupid enough for my taste. Honestly, the more I see of links, the less I dislike them, but that's mainly because the first wave of cybers and link monsters was like witnessing 20 different FTK engines suddenly spawning into existence with no foresight by the developers whatsoever, while the later ones seemed to be a lot more tame and kind of what people were referring to when they were under the impression that links would slow down the game, which is pretty funny in hindsight. Anyway, no, I sincerely don't think they will quote-unquote kill the game. Many people feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Has reached the peak of power creep every time something new and dangerous shows up, and then it either gets nerfed into oblivion or Konami finds a way to replace it with something even more broken. We lived through Frog FTK winning worlds, we lived through the late Zexal era of loops, lockdowns and rank 4s, and I can guarantee you that even if links do end up damaging the player base numbers, said damage is likely not gonna be significant enough to matter. I'm not the biggest fan, but I'll see where it goes, and if they do end up killing the game, it's free drinks on me. And while we're on that topic, what do you think about Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS so far? It's the definition of alright, I guess. It hasn't done anything particularly bad yet, but neither did it captivate me the way the early episodes of the other series did. Honestly, it's a pretty brave decision to have a card game show this focused on the story and barely have actual card games in it, but I kinda wanna focus on the card game aspect for a short while. The first duel in VRAINS was really underwhelming actually, to me ranking just above the first battle in Duel Monsters. Yes, that is just how much I disliked it. The few moments of CGI were actually cool, but the animation overall was abysmal, the turns were uneventful, and it featured a dumb situational spell card that was put in the episode for the sole purpose of saving the protagonist's ass, and will never actually be printed. To add to this, the Link summoning animation is ridiculously long and bloated for no good reason, and I would actually be fine with it if it was being used sparsely for big fat boss monsters, but no, during Yusaku's duel with Go in episode 5, they took their sweet time to reuse the animation for every single of the 4 Link monsters he summoned. Like, if you're gonna have an anime character pull off basic combos that take a good minute or two in real life, then don't arbitrarily stretch it out in hopes of making these boring ass plays seem more exciting, cause it just makes them more tedious to sit through. Also, don't pretend like the speed duel skills aren't just action cards in disguise. So yeah, disappointing duel writing so far, but Yusaku is actually an interesting character. I was pleasantly surprised to see him displaying emotion here and there as opposed to being Yusei number 2, which I was afraid he's gonna be. He's a bit of a douche, but given his implied backstory, I think he has reason to be. Ignis is surprisingly not annoying and is in fact pretty likable as far as comic relief characters in Yu-Gi-Oh go. I also like Aoi's character so far, but seeing how the series has the main director of 5Ds at the helm, I'm holding off from any optimism in decent development for the female cast for the time being. I do like the tone of the series, which is serious to an extent but knows when to treat itself lighthearted, and I feel like it balances these two aspects better than early 5Ds did. Admittedly, there wasn't much wacky stuff in early 5Ds in the first place. Again, I'm still waiting for the standout moment, that one scene or even entire episode that gets me hooked to the show because it was so well written or had an amazing duel. Like, the moment I fell in love with Arc 5 was when I saw the LDS trio not only summoning dual terminal monsters but actually making plays that were relevant in the meta, disregarding the disappointments of Arc 5 that followed. I remember the soundtrack and atmosphere of early 5Ds and the feeling of a dark urban adventure, or the comedy of GX's first season. Basically just give me anything the other series did not do before, but not in the form of a slowly unfolding plot that serves to occasionally make way for card games. The mystery of the world beyond the data storm, as well as the backstories of the main cast and the villain, are definitely interesting enough for me to keep watching, lack of a standout moment notwithstanding. But for the love of God, somebody please give these people some animation budget. Which old archetype would you most like seeing legacy support for? A few things come to mind, like Vylons and Cloudians, but a set of cards I would primarily like to see being treated with love is Moki Moki. I absolutely adore his design, and the idea of swarming the field with tiny normal monsters which you then proceed to buff up to insane attack values is a fantastic concept, which was sadly never revisited after the extremely brief initial wave of Moki Moki support. It's not even an archetype at this point, but it could easily be made one with a few more support cards that specifically affect Moki Moki, or even just level 1 light fairy types. I think a field spell as ridiculous as Zelos is a necessity, but they also need some monster and trap support on the side. For example, a fusion monster that's not complete garbage would be pretty nice. You could very easily make the field be able to search Moki Moki Smackdown and pop fairy types to make you plus, as well as apply the actual effect of Smackdown. The only thing I'm worried about is that it would potentially turn into rank 1 XCs or even link spam, but you could also circumvent that by limiting the player to fusion summoning with a field spell. Basically, the idea is to stay Moke! Now, to wash away the sin of talking about hypothetical Moki Moki support for an entire minute of my life, let's move on to the more specific questions. Some Guy Cards asks, what's your dream job and what are you going to college for? At the moment I'm finishing up 3rd year of psychology, and while it's an extremely interesting field I would love to know more about, Montenegro's university organization is severely lacking in so many aspects you would expect from modern psychology courses. Like, we barely do any actual practical work, we are not being taught proper psychometrics, half of the teachers don't give two shits about their subject, and a lot of the ones that do couldn't hold your attention in a lecture to save a life. Psychology in Montenegro is a small but developing sector, so to put it. If you know what you're doing, you're actually more likely to land a psychology-related job here than, for example, in the States, where the psychology field is horribly oversaturated, or so I was informed. I'm likely transferring to Serbia for my final year, so we'll see how that goes. As for my dream job, anything where I as a person can be heard and make change, really. After graduating psych, I'll either open private consultation or join a mental health institution. Also, considering this country's lack of education on the matter, I wouldn't mind going up as a public speaker about issues regarding these things. The thing I appreciate about having a YouTube channel, for one, is that I can reach out to a huge number of people and change hearts and minds, if even a little, just by sharing my own thoughts, and I think that's great. Other than that, if all else fails or if I'm looking for something a bit less demanding, I wouldn't mind becoming a media consultant. I know, that is so sexy. Not to mention cool and interesting. Anyway, next question is from Contla3. What are you actually drinking on your videos when you take a shot? Exactly what it says on the bottle, son. Vinjak by Rubin from Serbia. Mine's a few years old, so it hits just about right for a single shot I need for a video, but not strong enough to disable me from doing retakes if necessary. For casual drinking, I honestly prefer just down-to-earth beer like most people, my Montenegrin preference being non-Yugioh, which is apparently an acquired taste given its abysmal international ratings. I wish I could have genuine sangria at least one more time in my life, since that's the stuff I got wasted on when I was in Spain 3 years ago, but I'm not enough of an alcohol aficionado to cross several countries just to get shit-faced on wine that tastes like fruit juice. Josh Rowland asks, Dearest Trainman, will you ever make non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content? Yes, most certainly, definitely, 100%. It is a thing that's confirmed to happen. The question is not if, it's when. So far I'm content with making Yu-Gi-Oh videos, but video game analyses were already a thing I was doing before I started RANK10YGO. Admittedly, the channel was in my native language and nobody here really watches gaming videos unless they involve titles in all caps and screaming at clips of Grand Theft Auto, so it didn't really work out. If I lose interest in Yu-Gi-Oh or the game drops out of relevance, I'll definitely change my focus to video game discussion, since I imagine I already have a decent number of followers who would be interested in that kind of content. Do I? I don't know, you tell me. Hugh Mystic asks, Shapesnatch has one eye, so does he wink or blink? First of all, Shapesnatch is the bow tie, the being you're talking about is the one whose shape was snatched, get it right. As for the question, neither. It never closes. It watches, judges, observes, forever. Read more on the RANK10YGO wiki in the description. Jamil0 asks, how did you get such a great handle on the English language? You also seem like you know more than me about English language pop culture and memes and stuff, even though I'm from the US. You see, when you're a kid whose interests include anime besides Dragon Ball and video games besides Counter-Strike 1.6, and you live in a country where said interests are shared by less than approximately 0.3% of the population, you tend to seclude yourself from your own culture and instead assimilate into the internet, where you run into many like-minded individuals who all happen to be speaking English, so you don't really have much of a choice other than to do the same if you wanna get by. That's really all there is to it. I learned English from video games when I was a kid, got better at it by using the internet, and I familiarized myself with US culture by primarily interacting with American websites and talking to American people during my teenage years. Montenegro is just that inhospitable for a video game enthusiast / filthy weeb. Bob Gracious asks, what do you think is the high point and low point of your time as a Yugi-tuber? So, both high point and low point can refer to a specific video, as well as real-life effects of holding a somewhat popular YouTube channel, so I'll try covering both examples in both cases. In terms of videos, my low point was by far the Pot of Greed video, and I can never stress this enough. As a person who swears on his life that he absolutely cannot stand overused memes, looking back at that video, I have no idea what I was thinking, but soon enough the views skyrocket and a fair amount of people actually seems to enjoy watching it somehow, so I guess it remains on the channel to this day, for all of its misrepresentative glory. I remember thinking numerous times while making that video, man, this is really not funny. But I went through with it because that's what I do. Considering that I feel the Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube community is so lacking in quality humor that any semblance of a meme is immediately considered comedy gold, I guess I was just aiming to make a funny, high-effort variation of an existing joke, but the joke is still the most basic, unfunny, what does Pot of Greed do? Stretched over 12 goddamn minutes. Also, I guess calling Gen X the worst archetype ever was a blunder, but you'll never see me admitting to that mistake in public. As for the low point in the, I guess, career itself, there was this one period around the middle of last year where I was kind of vehemently attacking every other Yugi-tuber I ran into because of their, so to call it, low-effort content. As in, I was talking shit about them on streams, taking every chance to yell at them in their comment sections if they say something I deem stupid, and I'm honestly surprised at how long it took me to come together and just tell myself, you're going out of your way to make petty drama in the YouTube community for a shitty anime card game. Stop that. So I stopped being a pretentious shithead and just focused on myself instead of trying to make anyone I dislike realize their mistakes, as it were. And as a person with actual anger issues I'm working on getting rid of, I cannot express just how much it helps in the way of mental health to simply stop frequent interaction with the general YouTube community as a whole. As for the high points in terms of videos, my favorites are definitely the Guardians video due to it having the first lengthy live action segment, and the editing is easily my favorite in the Legacy of the Worthless episodes. Archetype Archive Gimmick Puppets were my favorite live action segment, as well as the most in-depth archetype discussion I delved into for a video, and the Arc 5 opening analysis because I like doing long stretches of serious critique. Shame about that copyright strike though. The best part about the whole YouTube thing itself is the cash dollars, honestly. I'll try my hardest not to sound like I'm bragging, but the fact that my average monthly payment from YouTube is twice the average Montenegrin salary makes life over here pretty good actually. I got my own place now where I can eat a jar of Nutella in front of a PS4 with my own fingers at 6 AM and have nobody scold me for it, and other than the loneliness-induced existential dread, it feels pretty good. And I got all of you to thank for that. Alright, time for a quick play. That guy from Code Gay has the following questions. How long have you been playing Yu-Gi-Oh? 10 years. Do you actually ever plan on reviewing the animes? I would if it wasn't for TV Tokyo's moronic copyright system. Do you ship Judai with someone? Yes, myself. Do you constantly have to fight off bears when you go outside? No, that's Russia. The worst we have are overly aggressive cocks. Am I asking too many questions? Not enough. Let's cap it off with the final question. Which is the best written / handled character in Arc 5? I don't fucking know. The shivers in the hippopotamus. The bikini hippo was consistently written. My name is Rata of RANK10YGO, and I may see you next time. In the podcast or the video. I don't know. It's 5 AM. I'm gonna go sleep. I'm a slimpy boy.